I mean,
Very nice
that's
of you.
that's worth $2,500, isn't it? Joining us right now, he's worth far more than that. We talked yesterday about our good friend Frankie. Now, he's obviously deep within our KHTK family, but as I get older, as I get older in this business, Jay, I know, same for you. One of the things that is so cool to notice is who's grabbing the torch of Kings coverage and the young upstarts. We remember back in the day when it was a blessing to go to a game, when you looked forward to the travel, when all you wanted to do was turn out content. Hey, can I do a podcast? Okay, let me do a radio show thing. Great. Let me write an article. And to see the absolute joy and humility that this next generation of amazing Kings coverage. There's so much innovation out there right now, and Brendan's at the absolute core of that. Brenden Nunes from the Kings Herald, Kings Pulse podcast, and so much more joins us right now. Brendan, it's Dave, it's Jay Mars. Good morning, buddy.
Good morning, guys. I appreciate you having me on. There's a lot of good footsteps to be able to follow in Sacramento media, so you guys help make it easier on me.
See that, Jay, right there? He deflects praise right back. A little praise toward. I mean, he may not have.
He will automatically be booked again this season.
Even now, to be clear, he may not have been talking about us.
He wasn't, but that's fine.
But we're going to take it that way. Brenden, was this your first? I can't remember. I do follow what you do, but I cannot quite remember. Was this your first or second summer league experience?
This was my first one. I've done the Cal Classic a handful of times, but this was my first Vegas experience.
Yeah, and it's something that's completely different, is it not? It's what did somebody? It wasn't the Disneyland for the NBA. It was something like that. They were describing it. They couldn't have been more right. Coachella, yes, perfect. Kind of like that.
Yeah, it's fitting. The amount of people that you just casually walk past and run into, and we're watching the Paulo Banchero, Keegan Murray instant classic of Summer League, of course, and you have Jerry West and Steve Ballmer sitting right there, and it's crazy the amount of people that you're just casually rubbing shoulders with.
Did you want to? And I know you guys didn't, but was there any part of you that felt like I'm going to get bold and I'm going to ask Jerry West his opinion on Keegan Murray?
I don't think that I was bold enough to ask Jerry West that one. But anybody that I did ask around while I was there, I mean, nothing but good things. And it's pretty weird to hear national media and people outside of Sacramento feeling optimistic, dare I say, about the Kings.
Well, and that's the question there is, how do you balance the optimism versus thinking, well, we've been here before and I don't want my heart to get hurt again?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Like, it's one of those, when you're looking at the roster of this team, it's like, okay, this is solid. I think that they should be able to do something here. The troubles come when you start comparing it to the rest of the West, when Portland is getting Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant back. And then the Clippers have a couple guys coming back as well. Same with the Pelicans. Obviously Minnesota got better. I guess Utah got worse, but it's just tough because the West is so deep. So I guess it depends what your bar of success is for this season. But in my mind, it's kind of play in or bust. And I think that they're in a good spot to be fighting for that.
Brenden Nunes from the Kings Herald, also the Kings Pulse podcast, joining us this morning. Brenden, I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, Keegan Murray's been the talk of the town for the last couple of weeks. Early impressions of Keegan Murray after watching him both in the California Classic and in Vegas over the last few days?
I've been surprised. I knew that he would get his shots in the flow of the offense and put up solid numbers and be a guy that you're surprised at the end of the night looking at the stat sheet of when did he end up with 22 and 8. But the style that some of it has happened, it has kind of surprised me. There's been some off the dribble game and a little bit of self-creation, especially in that game yesterday against Chet and OKC, that I think that really changes what, in my mind, the potential ceiling of him is. And I'm trying not to overreact to Summer League basketball all too much, but it's the only thing I have to hold on to right now. So I can't really help. I think the defensive versatility has been intriguing, and there might be more than just a role player, as I initially thought here.
Brenden Nunes joining us from the Kings Herald, the Kings Pulse podcast. Did you believe before Summer League that Keegan Murray was the best player available? And if you did not, has Summer League changed that for you at all?
I did not. I was pretty vocal about preferring Jaden Ivy for the sake of upside. And I do still think that that's where I'm at. I think that Jaden Ivy's athleticism and just the upside that comes with that is kind of too much to pass up on, but I'm certainly feeling better than I did. It's still not the decision that I necessarily would have made, but I'm putting trust into Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox in the front office, who seems to absolutely love Keegan. It's easy to see why. So it's not the pick that I would have done, but it's also hard to complain.
You know, Brenden, the other offseason moves have obviously stuck out, specifically with the acquiring Malik Monk via free agency and the Kevin Huerter trade. What do you think Huerter and Monk are going to add to this offense? And do you think really the plan just kind of seems like, let's just put a ton of shooting around Fox and Sabonis and see what happens from there?
That's definitely what it feels like, right? I mean, they had no shooting at the end of last season. The two of their best shooters, Buddy Hield and Tyrese, were traded for Domantas Sabonis in that deal, and Justin Holiday forgot how to shoot when he came to Sacramento. So it certainly seems like shooting's a priority. We heard length in shooting at the end of season pressers, and I think that's kind of what you're getting here. I think that there is some intriguing playmaking with both Monk and Huerter as well. And I actually think that Huerter, the more I'm looking into it since he's been picked up by the Kings, I think he's a better defender than I had initially thought. He's got good length to him at 6'7", and I think he can guard point of attack a little bit like they were having him do in Atlanta while they're hiding Trae Young a little bit. So I'm pretty excited about those two acquisitions, and the shooting is definitely the most important aspect that they bring, though, just to get ideal spacing, obviously, around Fox and Sabonis.
One thing, Brenden, we've consistently brought up with our guests is I completely agree with you, and Monty McNair did more than hint to that before summer, that shooting was a major priority for them. But the other thing they lack is defense. Do we look at Mike Brown as really the defensive upgrade for this team? Do you see defense at all coming from this team this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be Mike Brown, right? And I think some of these other guys have to buy in a little bit more often. I think a lot of buy-in and culture shows itself on the defensive end. So if you can get all these guys playing on the same page and playing for one another and trusting in each other, I think that you do have to kind of talk yourself into Mike Brown being the defensive upgrade. Like, we've seen Fox be a capable defender and have his moments. He's just never done it consistently. So can you get some buy-in from him on that end? And he has less offensive responsibility with Sabonis. And Sabonis can kind of hold his own, but there's still not much rim protection on this team. I do like that. At very least, it seems like they've committed to being a really, really good offense, because I was partially worried going into this offseason that if you try to balance both a solid offense and improving the defense from a admittedly very low bar, that you would somehow not manage to do either one enough. So it definitely feels like a team or a roster where the offense is going to have to carry a majority of the load, and then you just have to hope that all-out effort on the defensive end from everyone makes you capable on that end.
Brenden, I want to go back to what you were saying about De'Aaron, especially with Domantas kind of taking some of the offensive load off of him as far as the playmaking and getting the offense going. We've heard since De'Aaron was drafted that he has the ability to play defense, but it just hasn't shown in his first 5 seasons. Do you think a lot of that is just because of the load he's had to carry on offense, that he hasn't really picked up his defense because of that?
I think that definitely has to do with it. I think the other aspect is that it's been pretty bad defenses around him in total. I think that, maybe it's not a great excuse, but I do think there's an aspect of, why am I going to lock in for 20 seconds when at some point in those 20, Buddy Hield's going to give up a backdoor cut and all my efforts are going to be wasted. So I think there was an aspect of that, the offensive load and burden that he had on the offensive end, but also I think that it's almost infectious in the wrong way when you have poor effort defensively, and he certainly isn't someone that you can't point any sort of blame in his direction for that. So I feel like we have seen it in moments. There was a game this last season where he was guarding Jimmy Butler down the stretch, and I think he did a good job. He asked to get switched on to Brandon Ingram later in the year. So I'm feeling like De'Aaron Fox is coming into this year with something to prove, and hopefully that means on both ends.
last thing for you, and this is another thing I'm kind of polling media members on. This won't happen. This is the most extreme example, and I'll pick on De'Aaron Fox since we were just talking about him. Let's say Mike Brown's whole thing is defense accountability, and whoever plays defense is going to get on the floor. And the opening game, the starter at point guard is Davion Mitchell, with De'Aaron Fox coming off the bench specifically for that reason. I mean, that's about as extreme as it gets. Would you support that line of thinking if Mike Brown were able to justify it?
Yeah, I mean, if he's able to justify it, I think it'd be pretty tough too, from my point of view. If it is like a message to De'Aaron that you better lock in defensively if you're going to be playing consistent minutes on this roster, because Davion Mitchell is obviously providing it and De'Aaron's capable. I would take a lot of convincing, but I guess that I could get there.
Obvious major hypothetical that will not happen, and I agree with both of you. I think De'Aaron is fully capable of playing even average to above average defense, and a lot of that depends. Like Andrew Wiggins, by the way, all of a sudden became an all-world defender. He just happened to have Draymond Green and a lot of defensive principles behind him. You can go to the Kings Herald, which I go to all the time, and Akis and even Greg, unfortunately, and Rory and the whole crew out there with some phenomenal swag as well on the King's Pulse podcast on the Blue Wire Network, which is doing wonderful things in the world of podcasts. Brenden Nunes with all your coverage there, fresh off Las Vegas and Summer League. We appreciate your time, my man. You take care.
Thanks for having me on, Dave and Jay. Appreciate it.
All right, you take care. What was I going to say to you, Jay? It was something having to do with that.